You've probably got one of these sitting in your kitchen or living room, right? We talk to them every single day. But have you ever stopped to think about what really happens when you ask your smart speaker a question? Well, today we're going to pop the hood and take a look at the AI that makes the magic happen. Let's get into it.
So you ask Alexa for the weather, and it just tells you. It feels instantaneous, almost like magic. Well, guess what? We're about to pull back the curtain on that magic trick. We're going to break down exactly what happens in that tiny split second between you speaking and your speaker answering back.
Okay, so the first thing you've got to realize is that these things, whether it's an Amazon Alexa or a Google Assistant, they're not just fancy speakers. They're really just the tip of the iceberg for this massive, incredibly complex AI system, a whole pipeline that's been designed for one single purpose, to turn your words into action.
But here's the cool part. No matter how crazy complex it all seems, it all boils down to just 4 simple steps. The device has to listen to you, it has to understand what you want, then decide on the best way to do it, and finally, it has to act. That's it. That's the basic framework for everything we're about to cover.
And to pull off those 4 steps, the system is built on 5, count 'em, 5 major layers of technology, all working together perfectly in sync.
This is basically the roadmap for our whole journey today. We're going to start with the physical input, then jump into how it turns sound into text with speech processing. After that, language understanding figures out what you actually meant, the decision layer picks a task, and finally, execution and output makes it all happen. So, let's start right at the beginning.
All right, let's dive into section 1, waking up. Because think about it. Before your speaker can do anything, it has to know you're actually talking to it. And that all kicks off with one very specific phrase.
And that's where the wake word comes in. You know it, right? It's that magic phrase, like Alexa or Hey Google, that basically works like an on switch. It's you telling the device, hey, listen up, I've got a command for you.
Now, this slide is super important because it tackles that big privacy question everyone has. Let's be really clear here. Your speaker is not always recording your private conversations and sending them off to some server. Instead, it's just sitting there in a super low power mode, locally, listening for one thing and one thing only, that wake word.
So how does it do it? Well, it's all thanks to a tiny little AI model that lives right there on the device itself. It's kind of like a security guard, constantly comparing every sound it hears to a specific pattern of the wake word. And because it's all happening locally, it barely uses any power, and more importantly, it keeps your private conversations private.
Okay, so the wake word was detected. The device is now wide awake and listening. Now for part 2. A really important translation has to happen. Your voice, which is just sound waves, needs to become text that a computer can actually read.
This is where a technology called automatic speech recognition, or ASR, jumps into action. You can just think of ASR as the world's fastest, most accurate typist. Its only job in this whole process is to turn the audio of your voice into digital text.
So, when you say play music, a really powerful ASR model up in the cloud grabs that audio, it even filters out the noise of your TV or the dog barking, and bam, it spits out a clean little text string that just says, play music. Now that we have clean text, we're ready for the most mind-blowing part of this whole journey.
We've got the words. But, just having the words isn't enough, right? Now comes the real AI challenge, figuring out what you actually want. This is all about getting to the meaning, the intent behind your words. And that's the job of something called natural language processing, or NLP. Honestly, you can think of NLP as the brain of the whole operation. It takes the text from the ASR, and its job is to figure out the goal. It's trying to answer the question, what is this person actually trying to accomplish right now? Let's break it down with a classic example. You say, Alexa, turn on the living room light. Now to you and me, that's super simple. But for a machine, that's actually a pretty tricky puzzle to solve. And here is how the NLP brain solves that puzzle. It's not just reading the sentence, it's digging for meaning. It identifies the core intent, the main goal, which in this case is something like turn on device. Then it grabs all the key details, which we call slots, like what device are we talking about? A light. And where is it? The living room. It has successfully turned your messy, everyday human language into perfectly structured data a computer can understand. So, we've gone from your voice to text to what you actually mean. Now for the final and most satisfying part, making something happen in the real world.
This is where skills or actions get tagged in. The easiest way to think of these is like little specialized apps on your phone. You've got one for music, one for weather, and in our example, one for controlling all your smart home gadgets.
The whole thing works just like a relay race.
First, the NLP figures out the turn-on device intent and passes that baton over to the correct smart home skill. It also hands over the data we collected, our light and living room. And that skill is what actually makes the final call to the cloud that tells your light bulb, hey, turn on.
And of course, the process isn't really over until you get a confirmation. The system cooks up a quick text response, and then another cool bit of tech called text-to-speech, TTS, turns that text into the natural-sounding voice you hear. And just like that, the light snaps on. The loop is totally complete.
So that's the whole process. From you saying one little word to a light turning on, it's this incredible, seamless technological pipeline. So for our last section, let's just zoom out a bit and think about what this all means for the future of voice technology.
Now, like with any cool new tech, there are always trade-offs, right? The advantages are obvious. It's hands-free, it's super fast, you can automate your whole house. But on the other hand, the limitations are just as real. They're pretty much useless without the internet. Privacy is always going to be a concern. And honestly, they're still not great at understanding longer, more complex conversations. And that all leads to this one, really fascinating final thought. Right now, we command these devices. We tell them what to do. But as this AI gets better and better, they're going to become less like tools and more like partners in a conversation. So that leaves us with this huge question. What happens to our relationship with technology when our devices can finally, truly understand us? Definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.